Hey church, it's Pastor Don, and hopefully you liked the last video I left talking about devotionals. And today I'm going to do a book review, and I'm doing this because I believe leaders are readers, and learners are readers, and we need to, as a church, if we're going to grow, we do need to learn from books and different ways that are going to challenge us. I remember this old saying that a pastor mentor who discipled me at one point told me is you don't have to agree 100% with the book you've read as long as you can glean stuff out of there and distill that to use in your ministry. That said, one thing I'm going to be doing over the next year is I'm going to be going through a lot of these books. I have a lot of books in my office. I am trying to clean stuff up now and try to make it into a more presentable space. I'm actually hoping to maybe get my bookcases, some of the bookcases that you see back of me, over where the other bookcases are, and maybe even try to figure a way to squeeze this desk in there. And then I'm going to have something else over here. I'm trying to figure it out. I'd like to have kind of a meeting space here with a couch or two to do the men's discipleship at some point. I don't know. Things are in my head. I'm trying to do this. But if you see a basket out in the sanctuary or fellowship hall or wherever, and it says free books, grab the book. Don't bring it back. These are books that I am going to read. And as somebody told me, the best way to thin books out is, ask yourself, am I going to reread this book again? Is this book worthy of passing on to somebody? Is it worthy of just the garbage bin? Those are the things. So if you see that, grab the books, know that they're approved by me. They're good to read. And then, you might decide to keep it yourself, or you might say, hey, you know what, I'm going to bring it back and put it in the thing, and hopefully somebody else will grab it. Or I know somebody who would really benefit from this book, so I'm going to hand it to them. Okay, so that said, that actually cut in half what I had for our intro. This is a book review, and I thought this was something worthy. Last year, if you remember last year in Kentucky, Asbury, yeah, I think it was Asbury University in Kentucky had that revival going on, and it was controversial. Let's be honest. I know that there's going to be some Christians that are going to say, "Why are you saying it's controversial?" Because it was. There were a lot of people that were denying it was what it said it was. There were people, wholeheartedly backing it up 100%, saying this is great. This is what is needed. But what I kept on hearing was there was a group of people saying, "Oh, it's not real. It's not real. It's not spreading around the country." Well, it's because you got to ask yourself, what is the difference between a revival and an awakening? I give you this book, Sounds of Heaven. It's right here, Colin and Mary Peckham. Both have gone on to be with the Lord, but they wrote this book, and it is, if you read it, it is about the revival on the Isle of Lewis, which happened between 1949 and 1952. Now, let me describe this for you. In fact, I'll show you. That's a picture of the two of them from that time period. Reason why I'm bringing this out is they go into deep thing about how we pray for revival when what we want to see is awakening in America. We want to see another great awakening, but we've done the Western thing. We've married revival and awakening together, and so it's hard for us to understand that revival is different from awakening. Awakening is something that can happen through on a national level or even a worldwide level. But a revival is something that happens in pockets. It's something that can happen in a town. It can happen much like here on an island. It can happen, in a church or in a church system. And that's what we need to come to understand. This book is really good because it goes into that discussion. And the one thing that this book also does is it's written uniquely. Let me say that. Mary and Colin, what they did is they split this book really in half, and the first half kind of sets up. This is what life was like on the Isle of Lewis. This is what island life is in Scotland. This is how things are, and they talked about like how this is right after World War II, and everybody is angry at God really after everything, after the war and just different things. There is like this anger towards God, and what ends up happening is God just starts to send different pastors into the different churches, and they explain the situation with the Presbyterian Church in Scotland, how there's three denominations at this time. There's splits. There's been two splits, and they go into the discussion of what each denomination of Presbyterianism was like at the time, and they really do this like out of a labor of love. Like they want the reader to understand, but at the same time, they're also discussing what happened. Like they're giving you like already. I think it was chapters 6 and 7. No, chapters 5 and 6. That's what it was. Chapters 5 and 6 is reports from one of the pastors, Duncan Campbell, and he's given the town of Bravos on Lewis, 14th of December, 1949, and it begins talking about what he was witnessing going on, and this is really good, but they go on into discussing about like the pastors, about the churches, and how I think they said prior to the situation, to the revival happening, there was maybe 20% of the people on the island were going to church. Now, if I remember the numbers right, the island was about 1,800 people. So 20% of that is 36. If my numbers are wrong, no, 360. I think that's what it is. 360. Which is good, but you're talking 3 churches on the island, or I forget how they break it down, but the whole point of it is they go into like the situation and how just God sending these pastors, like these pastors just get sent there, each taking over their respective parish, and the one thing was even though they were Presbyterian, they each had a different flavor. One was the nationally known church. One was free will, and I forget what the third group was. But what ended up happening is they all started praying and working together, and it was through this common bond and love that they had that God really started to do something there. And that's what the first half of the book really is about, is it's explaining from the start to the end of the revival. So, it starts in 1959, ends in 52, and it kind of discusses everything. Like, one of the pastors was a native Gaelic speaker, and they pointed out that Gael speaking pastors before the war were almost a dime a dozen, but many died serving in World War II. So they were lucky to have one come to them that then began to work on a translation of the Bible into the native Gael language. Now, notice I'm saying Gael and not Gaelic because Scottish, the Scottish version versus the Irish version, two different languages. Trust me on this, I know. Two different languages. So that's the first half of the book. The second half of the book is interviews, and I think it's like with like 24 people. Yeah, it's like 24 people. Exactly. In fact, there's one who I love here. There's a Mrs. Annie McKinnon. So, um, uh, you know, family relative. But you know, this is the interesting thing. They talk with these 12 not 12, 24 witnesses um, to the revival and ask them the questions like, what did you experience? You know, how are you sure this was a revival? You know, give us your thoughts on what happened and how this changed you and how this changed the island and what's different today from back then. And that's really the sad part, I think. When you read this book, you know, you still see that these people still have a vibrant faith, but many have moved on. Many have moved either to the mainland, which would be Scotland, or have moved to other islands in the Scottish islands there. And so I think they said that now it's back to about 20% again of people who are actively participating in their churches. So, you know, there's a call for revival at the end of the book. And I think that's the reason why I bring this up. And this is a great book to read. Great book to read. And the reason why I think it is because if we're praying for revival in our churches, we need to understand what revival was before. If we want awakening, we have to read books on the first, second, third, and fourth grade awakenings that happened. And then pray for that, make that part of our prayer. And that's what he gets at in here. One of the key things he says in here, I should say they, Colin and Mary are husband and wife. But one thing that the two of them really put forward in this is just how much prayer needs to be given in order for a revival or an awakening to happen. But you know, this is really a good book. I'm telling you, I really enjoyed this book. This is definitely going to be in my collection that I'm keeping. But I will say that if you get a chance, buy this book. I had to order it on Amazon in order to get it. But it was a great book to buy. And I definitely say it's one that anyone who questions about Asbury, buy this and then really start to place it in there with what you have heard. And then like look up and see, like I'm sure we're gonna see like a year later, we're gonna begin to see and hear what some people have talked about. I know of some people that went to Asbury, and some of these are great guys. Some of these are guys that, you know, they're in the Reformed camp, so they are hard to press to say, yeah, it was. Like they definitely agree that there was a revival going on there. So with that, I will say goodbye. I love you, and I will see you Sunday.